I'm gonna go ahead and call the meeting to order. I am Rita Brown, District 11, and Sheriff Pedak.
Frederick Brookhouse, District 16. Aaron Carroll, District 23.
County Board Supervisor Aaron Decker, District 22.
Dave Gertson, District 15.
Julia Robinson, District 5.
Kenzie Mauer, Youth and Governance. Juniper Crescent, Youth and Governance.
Thanks, and Eric is excused. Okay. That's it. So we're doing the budgeting meeting, and this has been appropriately noticed, I assume. Okay, so that's like,
And we turn it over to Chris and
Okay.
explain it after this.
all right.
Yep.
Either two presenters.
So I sent out the email earlier today. I don't know if everybody had a chance to read it. I apologize for not getting it out yesterday, kind of giving you a night or day to look through it. But luckily these budgets are usually fairly simple, so hopefully not too much of a surprise or what you're gonna see. We'll start on page 1 with the UW extension budget. At the top, we compare 24 to 25 just so you can see what's different and maybe why compared to the year before. Salaries, temporary and FICA that make this up. What these dollars go towards is to have a seasonal part-time person out here that maintains the garden, arboretum and the walking path. That's been a focal point kind of UW Extension and Public Works over these past years to kind of grow that. Those who have served on the board before, approved budgets that allowed for free studies and surveys and plots to kind of go out here. That does kind of come with a little bit of maintenance, and that's what this is. The cost going up, we did before used to split that between UW Extension and facilities. It just makes it easier having an UW Extension for tracking, reporting purposes. So that's why you see the increase here. Jumping down to data processing, that is pretty neutral. Other professional services, what makes up 99.5% of this number, if you flip over to page 2, it's called the 136 agreement. Again, here we compare 24 to 25. These are all the positions within UW Extension that the county has agreements for through the UW Extension program. We have all but one position filled, which is the health and well-being educator, which as of tomorrow could potentially be a financial stability security,
Right.
which would teach people financial literacy, which is probably a pretty good thing, honestly. It should be taught in schools, so to have that as a part of one of these programs, I think is a big benefit. The dollars don't change with that title changing, so what you see dollars wise is what you're going to approve throughout the whole budget, whether it's health and well-being or if it's financial security. You'll notice that there is a slight difference of $600 between the 228,170 on this page 2 and page 1. That helps account for end of year report that UW Extension needs to put forth. That pays for the expenses to have that done. And that is the total of contracted services. Going down into the supplies, overall total of $550, primarily in the mileage and travel. Since COVID restrictions have kind of lightened up, we're having more full staff of UW Extension, more mileage and travel also comes along with that.
And if I may add too, we have our diversified vegetable emerging crops educator, where that position had been vacant for quite a while. And so now that that's filled, she's traveling much more moving forward. With minimal dollars in there because the position was vacant. It'll be a full year of having that position filled versus, well, whatever, but half year this year.
The public liability insurance, this is just an allocation countywide. Finance gets a lump sum number that is divvied up. Patty was just speaking on it. She can speak better than I can. It's formulated that gives out certain percentages to the divisions based on
We had a study done last year, an actuarial study to give a better allocation percentage to each of the divisions. So there's some slight changes, some higher, some lower as you compare from last year to this year. But we felt it had been a while since we'd had some sort of analysis done and allocation, and felt that we needed to update that, and there were changes, obviously.
Which brings us down to the bottom line, the difference between the levy, pretty much 11,000, again, broken up between the salaries and the increase of the 136 agreement, which I should notate, if those positions are vacant at any point in the year, the county does not pay for the vacancy. We simply pay for what, has been utilized, and then therefore that extra levy gets redistributed or usually returned to the general fund. And that, there's no capital for UW Extension, so that is pretty much the high level overview of what the office, area of UW Extension is. So if there's any questions on any of that, let's hear it.
I would move approval of the budget.
We have to take, that's the whole.
There,
Oh,
so there is a page 3 that goes
I
along.
didn't see that.
Yeah, no worries. The UW Extension programs and the after-school program, now, these are all levy neutral. What these programs are, you can probably speak a whole lot better to share than I can.
Well, their breakdown of the various revenues or projects, are not projects, excuse me, but the different educators and the either revenue that has either rolled over from past years or that is new revenue. I can give you an example. For instance, we have our youth development educators, so positive development, they're interchangeable, who just received $1,150 in grant money. So then, for instance, that would be added to that. It's not there now because we just found out today, but like those kinds. So it's various programming revenue, various programs that FEJ does, such as spring garden, landscape, and grounds maintenance course. So if that's some of that as well.
So it's, how it's presented, shouldn't really expense unless they get the revenue in. A lot of times more revenue comes in than expense, and that kind of builds for other things that can be allocated to program expenses that can be. The after-school program, it has been some years, since that's actually kind of taken effect, but it follows the same guidelines where we receive revenue to utilize that expense.
Exactly. So that one is strictly 4-H, that after-school program.
And that is all the UW Extension budget.
All right, so we have a motion,
To approve the UW extension budget.
Second.
all right? Motion by Supervisor Gertson, second by Supervisor Decker. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, using governance? Aye. All right. Board,
Aye.
any opposed, any abstaining? All right, motion carries. Thank you very much.
Flip right over to page 4, which is a high-level summary of planning and development budget. This can be referenced to pages 145 through 155 in the budget book. So starting at the top, I should say the overall increase of levy with planning and development is around 3.5%. A large majority of that, almost all of that, is within personnel, and that just comes with the annual raises and increase cost associated with that. The contracted services in 2024, planning and development took on Salem Lakes for building inspections and permitting. You guys would have approved that resolution earlier in the year. So that added cost to some of these dollars, which is why you'll see such a large increase from 25 to 24, which is us accounting for the revenue in and also the expense out. It's a little confusing to track because the revenue hits 3 different accounts below. The easiest way for me to kind of try and show it is if you take the increased number of the 215 off to the right, and you look at the 40, the 55, and the 120 of the corresponding revenue, that's where you'll kind of see those allocations broken out. As for the actual contracted services outside of these inspection services, it did overall go down roughly $1,000. Some of the commitments that planning and development had have come to an end. I forget what the latest survey or study.
Oh, the comprehensive plan?
Sure.
Yeah.
That came complete, so we then lowered the professional services by 15 grand going into 2025 because there was no longer that need for the expense. The supplies, they decreased very slightly just based off of some of the department needs and the historical trends that we've seen. And then the fixed costs, it increased levy slightly, but I used increased very loosely because this is a transfer from health. Last year, there was a sanitarian position that was relocated in the planning and development, and that transferred the salaries from health to planning and development, but they maintained the lease for the vehicle that they use. Now in 2025, planning and development is taking on that lease, and that's why you see an overall increase to that line. I should notate as part of the capital, we talked a little bit about the vehicle for 2025 in the CIP vision meeting, but in 2026, that lease comes to an end midway through the year. So we plan to, rather than lease a vehicle, purchase a vehicle in 2026, which is the second vehicle that you see in that line. As for the revenues, land conservation, state aid, these are some reimbursements for the admin cost through the state. Those have pretty much remained neutral. The permit use in the Summers and Salem revenue, those have increased because of the inspection increases. The sanitary fees have no increase. The headcount is still a half, and the development review and verification has not increased. However, money that is put into that as kind of like an in and out count that they like to refer to it as is that inspection fee. So that is why we break it out to kind of see the difference of things outside of that inspection fee aren't necessarily going up. And then we get to the levy, which has a increase of roughly 27,000. And if you look at the personnel, the increase is roughly 25,000, and that is pretty much what their budget reflects. As Supervisor Brown had pointed out, as some of the actuals, if you're looking in the budget book for some of these revenue accounts, they're up in the 400, 500,000. When we were putting these budgets together, we're going on an estimate of what we think we may see. It doesn't have as big of an effect on what the bottom line numbers are because anything that's coming in is also going out. And after we've had a full year of that, going into next year, you'll likely see these numbers increase just because of the actuals that we've seen in this year. That pretty much covers the main part of the budget. If you flip to page 5, this again touches on the capital. The 2025 vehicle we talked on, one of their trucks is completely broken down and their other trucks are nearing 20 years or over 20 years. We want to be proactive and not have any operational inefficiencies because of not having a vehicle. So we're putting it in for 2025. And the 2026 one again is for the sanitary and instead leases. Looking to page 6. Only half of this page refers to planning and development. Obviously, dog parks, trails, and civic center are outside of that. It's just kind of thrown on this page for our next meeting when we do all of DPW presentation and DPW and finance. But the first 4 outside of the Board of Adjustments where there's no difference between 24 and 25 in regards to the levy, all the rest of these accounts are all similar to what you saw with UW Extension where they need to generate the revenue in order to have the expense. There's no levy hit to any of these accounts. Andy, if you want to add anything anywhere, feel free.
Nothing more to add other than to answer any questions you may have about anything.
We had talked informally in work session about increasing the fees, and it looks like that didn't happen. Is that correct?
Right, so anything on these revenue numbers that we have here would have been based off of pre, I guess conversation, I think conversation was late, correct?
So, yeah, so we have not done an analysis on any of our fees, and, I mean, you had mentioned that, and we intend to do that now after, going through the winter season.
So tell me about that.
Well, we'll take a look at the other communities, the fees. Typically, what we do is we send out an email to the counties surrounding us and in the Southeast District to see what their fee schedules are and see if it matches up with where we're at. If they're higher or lower, then we'll have to make a determination if it's necessary for us to adjust ours. Now, we had done some review of our own fees just internally, just to see like, how does it match up? Because basically there is state law that indicates that we're not supposed to charge a fee higher than with what the cost is to provide the service. And so we had done some adjustments a couple of years ago. Some went up, some went down, like decks. I remember that was one we went down because we could see that the time it takes to do a permit for a deck was way less than with what the fee would be. So we're gonna do that type of analysis then through the winter while we have time. I mean, right through the summer is our busy time. We don't really have the time to look into those things.
So I worked on this for so long. Process you talked about is what I remember. I'm trying to remember what are those that cadre of fees add up to? Is it 100,000? I'm trying to remember the total. Well, those permitting fees and
Permitting fees?
not, the fees that you'll be looking at when you look at adjusting.
Yeah, so what we've been taking in then is that line of permits, land use fees. So that's the 160.
So the 160, and so how is that account? So we went from 120 to 140 because of the contracts we have for service, not because we increased the fees, right?
Right.
Yeah. And
Taking on Salem Lakes had more revenue coming in for that.
so that has nothing to do with why that went from 120 to 160. So if you strip all that stuff away and just look at the permits and the fees, are we holding our own there, or, are we breaking even or having a surplus there? Because I know building is down. We're not.
Yeah, I think the percentage of fees with what, total expenses of our office has typically been about 30%. I mean, there's a lot of work that we do that there's no fees associated with.
So I mean, that revenue account. So if we budgeted 100,000 for this revenue account, is it coming in at 70 and having a deficit, or are we coming in at 110 and having a surplus?
I think we're pretty much hitting our numbers with the revenues.
So in regards to the,
Yeah,
in regards to the end of year, what may get repurposed to general fund, or if it needs to have something covered, planning and development is usually pretty close to the flat or zero.
So so if we were to increase the permits, we would have a levy reduction, because we're not just backfilling a deficit a year.
Be true, yeah, that would probably hold some truth.
So, and are you expecting, Andy, are you expecting that if you do this review, you'll find somewhere where, now, I'll back up even more. I know that since I've been on the board, we had a pay plan increase, and we had increases in our health insurance costs. So logically, it would seem to me that the cost of providing the service that drives the permit would have gone up over the last 2 to 4 years based on that pay plan we approved. And so, would you expect, like you mentioned one tier of permitting, where you discovered you were overcharging for it? Do you think you've got that pretty much worked out, or do you think you might find some more where you're overcharging for it?
No, I don't think that. I think we have that part worked out. But I think you're absolutely right from a standpoint of just the cost going up over the last couple of years, that would seem to indicate that everything would be going up.
I'm thinking of making a motion that would, direct the administration to do the study you're talking about and increasing that account by $10,000 and reducing levy by $10,000. So that's the motion I'll make. I'll make a motion directing staff to complete that permit review and then increase that revenue line by $10,000 from 160 to 170, and then reduce the levy to 16,748. So that's the motion that I'll make.
I'll second it for sake of discussion.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Supervisor Robinson.
I'm trying to understand where the $10,000 came from, because we could have, you know, it sounds like, and if the motion was simply to direct administration to do the research and come back to us and give us an update on their new updated fee schedule, I'm 100% there. But to randomly come up with a $10,000 number when we have no idea where things, yes, things should go up, but should they go up 2%, 5%, 10%? You know, where that number is coming from, I'm completely unclear.
And
So I can talk about the number. I
before,
mean, it's not random.
before you do that, can you also, can you tell us how long that process would take? Because I feel like we're kind of at odds for the process to approve a budget as well as give you time to do the
I
process.
think we would be able to complete it by the end of the year, so January 1st would be ready to go.
Yeah.
We might have to bring it before this committee, the first meeting in January.
Yeah, but my issue is that you don't have a,
Right.
but then you don't have a budget. I mean, I know you have a budget, but I feel like I feel like we're at cross purposes, but please Supervisor Griffin talk.
So, I mean, if you look at you know, you haven't done a study for how many years?
Maybe. I mean, we've done some minor adjustments in between, but probably it's been about 5.
So you haven't done a study for 5 years.
I think I was on the committee and so was Supervisor Solinsky.
Okay, and when was that?
Yeah, well, it could have been 5 years ago.
Okay,
So we have 5 years of growth in our spending. I mean, if you look at this 1.4 million and you look at this 160,000, and you look at how it relates to our spending and you see that it hasn't increased in 5 years, it's probably going to be more than 10. So I'm lowballing it. And if for some reason something happens where the permitting declines because there's less activity, or after you do your review, 10,000 isn't too big of a gap to cover in the 26 budget. So it just, it's being responsible and not over levying for something we already know we're going to do. The 10,000, you know, after working on this for 30 years, 10,000 pretty reasonable.
Andy, do you agree with Supervisor Gibson that 10,000 seems reasonable?
I mean, if we figure that everything might increase 2 to 5%, with that, I mean, I guess it's definitely possible. Would you think, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I would certainly want to look into it to a better degree, but based off of what you recently presented, what could potentially be Summers increase value in the contract for their permitted inspections, it was around that amount. So we could look into it and see, and to the point that Supervisor Gertzen, I think, is trying to make. If it's 7, a $3,000 difference is kind of easily coverable within the overall budget. So that's all I can say.
Go ahead, Supervisor Decker.
I remember when we did task 5 years ago or however many years ago it was, we wanted to ensure that we were not overcharging. That it was a kind of break even thing, that we weren't charging more than we actually, it cost us, so that way we weren't, overcharging citizens of the county. And, just as a reminder to the newer members of the committee, if we make any changes here, they go as recommendations to the finance committee. They're not actually changed officially unless the finance committee adopts them. So it's just a recommendation. Right, Supervisor Carroll?
Can you remind me or just restate which item you were going to increase?
This $160,000.
So it's the account 444,250
Yeah,
land use fee?
yeah,
Okay. So that's, 10,000 on 160,000, that's less than 5%. It's like 4%, right? Or something, give or take 3 to 4.
and the salaries have definitely gone up more than 4%.
And the cost of the
Have your
salary.
salaries only gone up 4%?
And health insurance.
Or they're going up more than that?
What would you estimate, Patty, in 5 years?
I would say they've gone.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Way more than,
at least 2% per year annually.
it's gonna be more than that.
So compounded.
All right, any further discussion?
Seems reasonable to me.
Do you have the motion written down and?
Not exactly word for word. I'll be listening to the.
You want to restate it, so.
We're gonna increase we're gonna direct that a fee study be done as explained by the director. And we're going to reduce the levy by $10,000 and increase the permit land use fees by 10,000. That's the motion I made. And
Unless seconded by. Okay, so no further discussion? Youth and governance, what say you? Other board?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Thank you.
Motion to adopt.
Well, go ahead, you can make the motion. Yeah, that's fine.
I'll
Well, I
second,
can wait.
I'll second it. And
Okay,
then we'll have
motion to adopt as amended.
Okay,
I second.
okay, so Supervisor Decker made the motion to adopt as amended. Supervisor Gibson seconded. Supervisor Carroll.
This is just more of a general question here as I'm looking through it and trying to understand it. So I go down to the bottom, the total levy as it's shown in the current budget. I know the numbers don't show the amended one that we just voted on, but so it shows the levy of $774,033. 2024 adopted budget is $747,285. So really it's $28-ish thousand, $27,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you do the math on that, it's like 3.5%.
Right.
So it's like, when you think about all the costs for the people, personnel, stuff like that, you're like, okay, that seems to make sense. But then you're like, wait a minute, we've got $50,000 of a vehicle here that we're buying in there. So really, if you think about it, the current budget actually is a reduction in levy here if you take out that vehicle.
So the vehicle won't be reflected in this. What you're seeing on this page is the operating. So the levy is only affected to the operating. The capital budget of 50,000 is the capital budget of $5,000.
So but that's up on the page 154, the bottom one. So that doesn't subtotal down to that?
It won't affect the dollar. I believe it comes out in the capital outlay or something.
Or that's actually the revenue side. It should be positive 50,000, okay. But over,
Yeah, I mean, to your point though, so I did this before I walked in. If you take out the personnel increase, it's roughly just over 3%. That brings that increase down to about 0.3. If you take out the $12,000 that is transferred from health over into planning and development, that now does bring it to a deduction in levy, and actually DPW's full levy that will be presented on the 14th will show a reduction in overall levy.
okay. All right, no, I thought that I was like, that's pretty, I felt like that was pretty astounding that to be able to do that year over year. But it's probably tied up in some of the revenue you're gonna gain from the addition of Salem Lakes and some other, and holding the line on some other items, is what it feels like, so. So, it was an observation, thanks for confirming it.
All right, so we have a motion to recommend the budget.
Recommend or?
I don't.
Adopt.
Doesn't matter, whatever, approve, motion to approve.
Approve the budget and a second
As amended.
as amended. Any discussion, any further discussion? Youth and governance? Aye. Board?
Aye.
All right, any abstaining? Any nays? Do that backwards. All right, motion carries. We're gonna take a brief,
Adjourn till 7.
yeah, we're gonna take a brief recess until 7. We don't adjourn. Take a recess.
For
Weird, so.
Okay, we're gonna go ahead and get the meeting called to order.
Yes, we're
Reconvene the meeting. I am Guida Brown, the supervisor for District 11 and Chair. PDEC.
Frederick Brookhouse, District 16. Aaron Carroll, District 23.
County Board Supervisor Aaron Decker, District 22.
Dave Gertson, District 15.
Julia Robinson, District 5.
Kenzie Mauer, Youth and Governance. Juniper Crescent, Youth and Governance.
And Eric Meadows is excused. So we held a work session yesterday and staff presented each item, allowing for community members to ask questions and receive detailed answers. Tell us about the notice for tonight's meeting.
We had a notice up on the screen, so we did post this in the Commission News as a Class 2 notice as required by law. It was posted on September 24th and October 1st.
And
And so with that, we can go to item number 4, which is a resolution to approve the appointment of Michael Bastianelli, Chief Information Officer to the Coventry County Land Information Council.
okay,
So he is here today, and so the Land Information Council was formed, not exactly sure when, but it was formed based upon legislation at the state level so that there was local management on land information funds. So the county pays into this fund at the state then disperses it, and the state wanted to have a local committee that would review this. And so that committee is made up of different members, including myself, which I get appointed, the treasurer, the clerk, surveyor, real estate agent, and one of the other positions is for the director of IT. And Mike is now the new director of IT, and so that would be appropriate for him to be appointed. If you have any questions for him, he's here.
Motion to approve.
Second.
all right, so motions by Supervisor Decker and seconded by Supervisor Robinson to approve the appointment of Mike Bastianelli to the I'm missing it,
Information.
Land Information Council. Any discussion? Youth and governance? Aye. Board,
Aye.
any opposed? Any abstaining? All right, thank you. Motion carries. Unanimous.
Thank you, Mike. And
Thank
we will
you.
not take questions on issues related to your,
Wait, I want to get my password worked out. All right,
So-
thank you.
Then we'll move on to item number 5, which is J&S Real Estate Company LLC. This item was tabled at the local level in Paris for various reasons, so we would recommend that this item be tabled until next month and see if it'd be ready to go.
Second.
Table from Supervisor Decker, second from Supervisor Gertson. Any discussion? Youth and governance?
Aye.
Board?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries unanimously.
All right, we'll keep you posted on that. We do anticipate that it'll make it through the town and then we'll hear it in November, but we'll wait and see. Then item number 6 is a resolution to approve the appointment of Supervisor Guida Brown to serve on the Kenosha County Land Water Conservation Committee. And so for items number 6 and 7, just so you know, there is a Land Water Conservation Committee. And it is, there are certain positions that need to be filled by, legislation again. And to fill those positions, the past practices always had, from this committee, the chair and the vice chair to sit on that. And so Rita is the chair. And so that's why she's being asked to be appointed to the Land and Water Conservation Committee. And she is here if you have any questions.
To approve.
Motion by Supervisor Decker, second by Supervisor Robinson. Any discussion? Youth and Governance? Aye. Board?
Aye.
Any opposed? No kidding. Any abstentions? Motion carried unanimously.
And then we also have the resolution to approve the appointment of Supervisor Frederick Brookhouse to serve on the Kenosha County Land and Water Conservation Committee. And again, the same explanation is for the reason why he is being looked at to be appointed to that committee. Move approval.
Second.
Motion has been made by Supervisor Gertzen, second by Supervisor Decker to approve Frederick Brookhouse to the Land and Water Conservation Committee. Is that right? Okay. Any discussion? Youth and Governance?
Aye.
Board?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries unanimously.
Yes, thank you. And just for the committee to know, Mark Jenks, who's our land conservation, myself had met with Guida and Frederick some months ago, just to kind of go through what was anticipated for this appointment to happen, just so they're aware on what what the committee does. So then we are able to move to item number 8, which is a tabled item, which we would like to ask be removed from the table first.
Motion to remove from the table.
Second.
Motion by Supervisor Decker and second by Supervisor Carroll. Item number 8 from the table. Any discussion? Youth and Governance? Aye. Board?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining?
Okay, with that then, it is the review and possible approval of an ordinance amendment to the text of the Kenosha County General Zoning and Shoreline Floodplain Zoning Ordinance for the addition of a battery energy storage system as a conditional use permit. And so we have discussed this yesterday and went over and made some minor edits, of which I did send that to you earlier, or late yesterday. And then I did comment that we did have Core Council send it to outside council and we were waiting for their response. That response did come like at 4 o'clock today. And there was some recommendations, and so those recommendations, John from Corporation Council had put them in as read. There were some non-substantial edits that helped strengthen some different sentences, clarify some things that she felt needed to be done. And they're before you to be looked at, and John is here to help explain that, or he and I can answer any questions you may have about the whole ordinance. And I think, yeah, I'll let you take a look at it.
Do we want John to go through them for us or just take a look and ask any questions? Anyone have a brother?
Well, I looked at them and they're not, in my opinion, they really don't
Let's just
change
look at it.
the,
They don't change the
it's
spirit
like
of
cleaning up the
ordinance.
words mostly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
pretty
and
much.
keep in mind, John, was this based upon the one that I sent like late yesterday, then the latest version?
They got the second version. They looked at the first version first, so they didn't have a lot of time to look at the second. But
Okay.
her email to me says that does encompass the second version.
So like, just to clarify, so when I made all the edits that the committee made yesterday and sent them, that these changes are made to that, so this copy should be our final.
Yes, she got that. You did look at the changes.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right,
It certainly looks like that, you know, just like cursory review.
Yeah.
okay, I just wanted to make sure that we have the final
Yeah.
of that. So then if the committee is open to approve these additional changes, then you should make mention to that. And then we can move forward.
One thing, and it kind of helps me understand why it is the final copy. In the third paragraph down, under battery energy storage system on site. If you go to the end of the sentence, there's a duplicate of that is, and that is. So we just have to remove
Which paragraph?
Oh, yeah,
the third one down after,
Oh, okay, yep.
that is emphasis.
yeah. It was just carryover because it used to read that is a conditional use that is intended, you know, and then we struck conditional use or something like that. So,
Yep.
option.
So you need a motion to accept all the changes we made yesterday, since we actually see them in green now, and plus all the changes that the outside attorney recommended. Is that what you want?
In this one, because we didn't actually post the ordinance online. And so this has kind of been a working copy until today. So can they just approve with what's before them?
I think they can approve what's before them conditional on publication.
Okay. Because what ends up happening is, you know, this can goes to county board for one reading, then a second reading, then it gets published. Then 45 days after publication, the bid becomes effective. Okay.
I make a motion to approve this battery energy storage system ordinance.
And I second, I'll have a question. Once it's on the floor.
All right, so it's been motion by Supervisor Decker, seconded by Supervisor Kurtzen to approve this battery energy storage system ordinance. Thank you. Go ahead, Supervisor.
Thank you. Through the chair to court counsel. So on page 3, we talked quite a bit at the work session yesterday about how we understand the replacement of the lost revenue. And I had comfort with the discussion that we had, but you're the lawyer on it. So I just want to confirm it in open session here that it says we will submit a joint development agreement to cover the absence of any utility tax collected by the state. So that any revenue that we get would be based on a contract. Right?
In the absence of a formulary from the state, we can do that.
And when we do that, we don't have to use the utility tax formula. We can use whatever we hash out in the contract.
Yes.
Yeah. And then, so that answers the first question. Then on part I, replacement of lost property tax revenue, would that be also similar? That would be driven by the contract.
Yeah, L, you mean L? Yes, it would be.
K and L would both be driven by the contract.
Well, yeah, L contemplates also a formulary from the state payment system that would be a formula.
Yeah.
But yes, the contract
Would drive it until, and then if the state were to come in and do something, some utility tax, then that would go away. Right?
The contract would go away
The provision in the contract for the payment would go away and be replaced by the state.
by the state formula.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good. That's what we talked about yesterday. And now you're confirming it actually from legal counsel. And that's what I wanted to do. So you accomplished that. So we have that in the record. Thank you. That concludes my question.
Thank you. Any other questions? Have a motion on the table to approve this ordinance in a second. Youth and governance. Or
Aye.
any nays? Any abstentions? All right, motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Then we are up for approval of minutes.
Remove approval.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the minutes from Supervisor Gertson and Supervisor Decker. Any discussion? Governance? Aye. Board?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained? All right, motion carries.
Citizens' comments?
Is there anyone wishing to speak? Anyone wishing to speak? Okay, there's anyone here to speak.
All right, then we have chairman, committee members, supervisor.
Oh.
Yates, have comments?
Any comments? I have no comments.
I can let you know that we do have a new item for November, and then we have the tabled item. That's all that we have, and there shouldn't be anything else.
Well, now that you mention it, is the Lake District gonna get queued up for the next board meeting, or will that be not the next board?
That's a good question. I mean, Joe has been working on that. What I am aware of is that the Lake District took the comments from the committee, and it looks like they're going to probably revile, or they need to start all over again so that they can address the concern.
Is there something in that process that precludes what we did going to the board versus not going to the board?
He asked me not to bring it up. Joe asked me not to bring it up to the board, probably because he's just giving them a chance to get their ducks in a row, would be my guess.
Correct. So it did not make sense to move forward with what was already put forth, knowing that they're going to refile and address the concerns that this committee had. And
Yeah, that's-
so we would let that happen.
And that's okay in the statutes?
It is,
Okay.
So that's sensible, but is it legal?
yes. I'm gonna go yes, because Joe had expressed it to me.
None of us went to law school.
I don't know if
He
you talked
did go to
about
law.
I have not talked to Joe on this
I
topic.
didn't get my,
But Joe did give me a call and we did discuss that and we talked it over, like, is that seem reasonable to move forward? And it did seem reasonable and it was within the law because this committee did with what you had to do.
and that's
And there's
per
still
advice from
90
council.
days for it to still go before the county board.
And that's per advice from council, right, John?
Not back.
If Joe, I'll,
Yeah.
I'll rely on Andy if Joe told him that it's on advice of council.
All right, good. I'll trust that. And so thank you for letting me discuss that. I yield. That's a good question.
I do have a reminder, I forgot, I have a reminder that next month we start at 6:30.
So with that, we're not gonna have the presentation, but we're gonna have reports.
We're gonna have written reports that are gonna come to us.
Okay.
And then we're gonna have a presentation. Andy and I'll discuss that, not specifically from extension, but like when Tenaska came in,
Okay.
not at 10 o'clock. Yeah.
You should say quarterly?
No,
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 that-
extension will be there quarterly,
Okay.
but we'll have a presentation different. And I'm not gonna make you
Something
sit through,
germane.
yes, something germane. I'm not gonna make you sit through a presentation that's not, and that has no bearing on what we're doing, but the hope is that it would make sense that, oh, that's a very interesting topic to have for us.
Well, everything on land use is interesting, so.
Did I not? Did not? Okay, so does that answer your question? So yeah, starting next month, written reports and have some.
We have no document to sign this thing.
We need one for the battery.
Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise, we're set for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Don't leave before, any opposed? Any abstaining? All right, don't leave before you sign this. Thank you.